Alright, I am back with another video, and today we have another episode in the Patron build series, and today we are building a Warlock of Titania, the Archfey of Archfeys, leader of the Summer Court, and presider over all Fey creatures. She is basically, as I said, the Archfey. When you think of an Archfey Warlock, this is basically who you turn to as kind of the prime example of who that should be, and it's easy to see why. She is definitely the perfect description of an Archfey, and like I say, she has an immense amount of power, some may even calling her the most powerful Archfey of all, which makes this build pretty simple to make, right? I mean, it's just an Archfey Warlock if it's so stereotypical. Well, we decided to do something a little bit different. For those of you that don't know, the Patron build series is made with the help of my community over on some live streams, which means that we get together on the live stream, talk about the build, talk about the character, learn some lore, and make something fun out of it. And looking at Titania's lore, we got an interesting idea. Not only is Titania herself known to take a few mortal lovers, shall we say, she's also always seen with a member of her court. She never tends to attend court meetings alone. So that got us thinking, what if, for the first time in a long time, I did a duo build, the Chosen of Titania and her court wizard Gale. That's right, we've incorporated Gale into this build, and while he won't be playing as much of a major role, he does have his own build tacked on in the second half of this video, so I'll be discussing that after the equipment section for this build. While I won't be going into as much detail of Gale's build, as it is a bit similar, the way the two builds, the one I'll be presenting today and the one that I'll be showing off with Gale, work together creates an absolutely immense combo that is able to completely lock down the battlefield and do pretty significant damage, all while sticking to a unique theme and having a pretty interesting build dynamic as well. Because believe it or not, we're going to be doing a combination of classes and subclasses today that I have never done before. Which shocked me because it was so obvious that I thought I must have done it before, but apparently not. So we're actually getting a channel first today, which is very, very interesting. Weird how Gale has been involved in both of those in a way. And also, because we're making a duo build specifically meant to work with Gale, and the whole thing about, you know, Titania and what I just said, like, this could actually be a really interesting roleplay opportunity to have a Gale romance, which is something I've never really considered in any of my builds before. As I am an aromantic person, I think, I don't really understand that sort of stuff, so it doesn't really come to mind when I'm thinking of builds, but this character would be a perfect partner to Gale, so it could be an interesting run to roleplay. So there you go for all of you shippers out there. I don't understand any of it myself, but you know what? Have fun with it, because I think this build would work. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into it. We're going to be starting as a Druid, just because this is going to get me some armor and weapon proficiencies that I want for this build that we wouldn't be able to get from just starting with Archfey Warlock. And that's the ticket. I have never combined Druid and Archfey Warlock. Yeah, never. The closest I ever came was a Nature Cleric, and I thought for the longest time that, of course, it's such an obvious combination, I must have done Archfey Warlock and, you know, Druid at some point, and I just never have. So again, we're doing it for the first time today. So, starting off with Druid, we're going to gain access to a few things, namely clubs, daggers, javelins, maces, quarterstaffs, scimitars, sickles and spears, light armor, medium armor, and shields. That medium armor was kind of the important part here. It's going to help with the early game, but it maybe later on, if you want to respec to start with Warlock when we actually have all the light armor and such that we want, you might not need to start Druid later on, but for the early game with the early game equipment, you are going to want that medium armor proficiency, so start with Druid there. We're also going to grab a couple of cantrips, and Guidance and Thorn Whip are a pretty good start. Guidance helping with all of our skill checks, as well as Thorn Whip being obviously a nature-based cantrip that's pretty strong, so that can work out for us instead. But feel free to take Shillelagh if you want to bonk people with your stick. Moving on to our ability scores, pretty standard spread for a build like this. Strength is at 8 because we don't need it, and Dexterity is at 8 because we do use the Gloves of Dexterity on this build. But here's the thing, we don't really need it. Usually when I make these multi-class like builds that are mad, so multi-ability score dependent, in our case, in this case, Wisdom and Charisma, I usually need the Gloves of Dexterity to help beef up the Dexterity stats so that we're not going to be taking massive amounts of damage all the time. But it's actually not necessary for this build. We will have so much battlefield control by the time this build is done that enemies likely won't even get a chance to hit us in the first place, and even if they did, we've got enough constitution and ways of getting around it that we can survive. So in reality, if you wanted to dump that intelligence to put those points into dexterity instead and not use the gloves of dexterity, you honestly don't need that much. We will just have so many tools to prevent us from being hit that it's not really going to be an issue. The only reason I ended up using the gloves of dexterity here in the end is because there were just no other glove options that I really wanted to use on this build. None of them felt particularly right, except for one option that was available really late into the game that has such a minor buff that I just thought, So honestly, the gloves of dexterity are mainly just here because there really wasn't any other option. But if you're running this with another build that uses the gloves, then you actually don't need them here. Feel free to just throw whatever you feel works well for you here and work with slightly different stats and you'll be absolutely fine. But otherwise, the gloves of dex do help the build, they're just not necessary in this case, which actually feels kind of nice. Otherwise though, we have a 14 in constitution, pretty middling, but it will be enough for our concentration saving throws and our HP. Intelligence is at 12, Titania is a pretty smart cookie. She does run the Seelie Court after all, and the Summer Fae Court as well. And as such, is very intelligent, able to, outwit anybody who would try and outdo her, which is, I guess, a very broad way of putting it, but you get the point. Intelligence is kind of a must on this build. Wisdom is at 16, as it is going to be one of our two main spellcasting stats, the other being Charisma, both of which I've put to 16 because we're going to be using both. For our skill proficiencies, we have quite a lot. I've gone with a wood elf here, as I felt like it made the most sense, allowing us to pick up stealth and perception from that racial choice, which is pretty nice. We're going to have both of those skills working pretty well for us. We also gain history and persuasion because I've gone with the noble background, which also felt like it made sense. And finally, nature and insight coming from our skill proficiencies here. Nature, for obvious reasons, but insight is a fun one because, again, being able to tell when people are trying to deceive you or lying makes sense when dealing with all of the intricacies of the Feywild courts, because let's be real, if anybody's going to try and swindle someone in a council meeting, it's probably going to be a fey creature. But yeah, you have a few other options there, so pick what you like, but I quite like the choices that we have here. And yeah, that's level 1. Moving on to level 2, we're immediately going to take this dip into Warlock, so we get the related dialogue, as well as our first subclass, obviously being Archfey. Being an Archfey Warlock at level 1 is going to give us access to Fey Presence, allowing us to charm or frighten nearby foes with the Feywild's beguiling, disturbing magics. It's a wisdom saving throw, and we can choose to charm or frighten. Charm obviously means that they can't attack us, and frighten means that they will be unable to move and will have disadvantage on their attack rolls. Being able to do either is pretty fun, because Titania herself is known for being a very, dry, she has a bit of dry humor about her. She can have fun, but if you piss her off, let's just say you don't want to piss her off. So while she can be a charming individual that is able to sway people to her side, she can also be absolutely terrifying when needed. And we'll be exploring that concept with our, our spell choices in a bit. Moving on to our cantrips, you are going to want to make sure you have a damaging cantrip on this build, but obviously Friends makes a ton of sense. Gaining advantage on charisma checks is always good. As well as for our damaging cantrip, I'd say you have a few options here. If you want to go down the shillelagh route and grab Booming Blade to be able to bonk people on the stick with the stick for massive damage, that can work pretty well. Poison Spray is a decent one. I don't know if I would bring Eldritch Blast here. This doesn't feel like a very Eldritch build, and I don't really know about the necrotic damage cantrips either. They don't really feel like they fit to me. So I would say you can bring Booming Blade plus Shillelagh from Druid to make your big Wisdom Thunder attacks, which could work pretty damn well. In fact, that's probably what I would choose. So we'll grab Booming Blade for now. Otherwise, Poison Spray is a pretty decent option as well. Moving on to our skill choices, we do have quite a few options. We already get Fairy Fire from Druid, so we actually don't need to grab that here. And while Charm Person obviously does make sense, we actually don't need to grab it here either, as we already have Friends, and this doesn't really do much for us otherwise. So we're going to be grabbing an interesting spell, for those of you who don't know the lore, and that is Hellish Rebuke. So believe it or not, one of the things that happens when you make Titania mad is she'll just start a wildfire. Like literally, her gaze is enough to madden people, as well as her temper can just set fire to things in the vicinity. So the idea of this character being hit, looking at the person who did it, and then just they immediately light on fire, is literally perfect. You wouldn't think Hellish Rebuke would be a great spell for this build, but it fits so well. We also have access to the sleep spell if you want to go with that, the Armour of Agathis spell, which also makes sense as she is an Eladrin, and they tend to change their seasonal forms quite a bit, as well as the fact that she does have an association with ice, in the fact that she has an ice throne and does have some ice-based magic. So I actually think Armour of Agathis to give ourselves some temporary HP, and Hellish Rebuke to retaliate with some fire if necessary, getting the power of a few different seasons in one, does feel pretty good, so we're going to go with that. With level 2 of Warlock, we're going to be able to grab another spell of our choosing. Again, really up to you on this one. I think Sleep makes perfect sense, so we'll grab that here. We also do get to choose 2 Eldritch Invocations, and as far as I'm concerned, you have a couple of options, but I think Beguiling Influence is obviously a must, giving us proficiency in Deception and Persuasion. We kind of want those on a high Charisma build, and since we didn't start with Warlock, this is one of the best ways to get those proficiencies. We're also going to be able to pick up another one of our choosing. Agonizing Blast would obviously work if we took Eldritch Blast, but we didn't. There's a few others here. Mask of Many Faces for Disguise Self, that is very Fae-like, and will definitely be a choice at some point in this build. Devil's Sight to be able to see in Magical Darkness is always useful, even if you're not going for the darkness shenanigans. But obviously, we are a Fae creature, we're a Druid. Speak with Animals would be good here, but we can actually get it from Druid, so we don't really need it here. So honestly, it's a pick your favorite situation. I'm definitely going to go with Mask of Many Faces, actually. At Warlock level 3, we get to choose our level 2 spell, our first one, and it's entirely up to you kind of what you want to grab here, but since we did talk about how Titania's gaze can cause madness, Crown of Madness is kind of a must here, so we're going to be picking that one up, as well as our Pact boon. Now, you have a choice. You can take Pact of the Blade, mix it with Shillelagh, bonk people on the head with a stick using Booming Blade, and be one of the most powerful spell swords in the game. You could take Pact of the Tome, giving you access to things like Vicious Mockery, Thorn Whip, and Guidance, 2 of which we already have, but Vicious Mockery is also pretty good, and gaining haste at the next level, at the next kind of stage at level 5. However, Titania is known for being a master of woodland creatures, being able to conjure them at her will, holding dominion over the forests, the deserts, the coasts, and the sky. Everything that lives within nature she holds dominion over. As such, Pact of the Chain allows us to summon a bunch of woodland creatures to our side, allowing them to, at level 5, gain the extra attack feature. Yes, we're taking Pact of the Chain today. 200 or so videos in since the last time we took Pact of the Chain in earnest. We're doing it today. I genuinely think it is the most fitting option for the build, getting a more powerful version of Find Familiar that allows you to summon these little woodland creatures to your side, or creatures from all over the planet, and have them fight for you, defend your honor, and die in a single hit, because god damn it, why does the crab have like 10 HP? Honestly, though, Pact of the Chain is the most fitting for the build. Obviously, Pact of the Blade and Pact of the Tome both work, so pick your favourites there. But god damn it, we're like 250 videos in, build videos at this point, 300 builds themselves. We're taking Pact of the Chain, because we're gonna be a rebel today. I did not need to go that extra for that bit. Moving on. Next up, we do get to choose another cantrip for our Warlock cantrips, and obviously, Minor Illusion for a little bit of Fae trickery does make a ton of sense. We're also going to be grabbing another spell of our choosing, and it's entirely up to you what you want to grab here. Obviously, we do have a lot of options. Calm Emotions and Enthrall both speak out to me. Enthrall especially because, again, being able to kind of use your Feywild charms to be able to tantalize people into looking at you feels very much like something like an Archey would do, so Enthrall makes sense. Calm Emotions, being able to manipulate the emotions of others, again, is something that Fae creatures tend to do, so Calm Emotions would make sense, but obviously both of these spells aren't the most powerful, so you can feel free to take something like Hold Person, Invisibility, Mirror Image, Misty Step, Phantasmal Force. All of these kind of can work. Honestly, it is a pick your favorite situation. Heck, even Hex if you want another concentration option, because again, literally marking someone who ticked you off and making them take extra damage, again, does make sense. So really, it is entirely up to you, but I think if I had to choose something that I felt fit the build the most, I'd go with Enthrall. You never know when it could have a use. We also are going to get to pick up our first feat of the build here, meaning that we're going to be able to bump up our charisma, since most of our stuff is charisma based for the moment. At Warlock level 5, we're going to get our Deepened Pact feature, allowing our familiars to gain extra attack. Woo. We also do get to choose level 3 spells at this point, and I would say, since we do get things like plant growth and such like that from Druid, I could see taking Blink if you want to, like, blink back to the Feywild for a bit and then come back later in a different place. That could kind of be a fun thing. Fear does also fit the build, but I do like Hypnotic Pattern the most here overall. I've got to take into account that we're also going to have Gale, who is going to be a pretty powerful wizard that's going to have a lot of concentration and control spells, so I'd like to be able to diversify our kit a little bit here. And I think Hypnotic Pattern being one of the things that we can grab, it being an illusion spell, is going to feel pretty damn good. Counterspell obviously also does work, but again, Gale is going to be in the party for that, so we don't have to worry too much here. And like I say, plant growth will come from Druid, as well as a bunch of other stuff, so I think that Hypnotic Pattern is pretty good for now. We also do get to grab another Eldritch Invocation, and honestly, we kind of already have everything that I would want here. While Mire the Mind is my usual go-to to grab slow, we honestly don't need it here, although I could definitely see this build using slow and then Gale using haste, and it kind of being like the twins in time, which could be a very, very fun dynamic. But otherwise, Devil's Sight also works, so feel free to pick between Mire the Mind and Devil's Sight, I would say. And to be honest, now that I think about it, that slow haste combo is really, really fun. So let's grab slow. And now we're done with Warlock levels. As much as grabbing Misty Escape would be fun, there is some more stuff I would like to get from Druid, so let's head over there. At Druid level 2, we're going to be able to grab our subclass, and we're actually going to be going with Circle of the Land today. While it is a footnote in Titania's lore that she did briefly have domain over the stars, or as like kind of a court based on the stars, you could actually go with Circle of Stars here, and it would be on theme, but I do like Circle of the Land more for the amount of spells that it's going to grab us. It's going to give us natural recovery to get those spell slots back, so I just kind of like the idea of Circle of the Land more. I don't really see this as a wild shaping build, but if you want to play with the new toy, Circle of Stars technically does fit. Again, it's kind of a footnote in the lore. But yes, Circle of the Land is what we're going to be going with today, which is going to allow us to pick up an extra cantrip. Let's grab that shillelagh for that bonking option that we want so much. You know, I know that I paired this build with Gale for the purposes of romance, but I've really got to stop saying bonking, because people are going to take that out of context, even on this. Anyways, let's have a look at our Druid spells. We have quite a few to pick from, and Titania is known for being able to cast Create Food and Water, and Hero's Feast, but we're not going to level 12 at Cleric here, are we? So, we're going to have to get something else to compensate for that. So we're going to grab some snacks, and we're going to grab a light drink. Create or destroy water is something she's known to do anyway, but she can also create food, so Good Berry makes sense to grab here. We'll also grab Faerie Fire, Entangle, and Speak with Animals. Faerie Fire, for obvious reasons, being able to cast Faerie Fire is literally the most Fey thing you could ever do, so picking that up here makes sense. As well as Entangle, it's a specific ability that Titania is known to have, to be able to summon roots from the earth to entangle her foes. Again, for just plain ticking her off, so Entangle is kind of a necessity here, and obviously we want to Speak with Animals. As far as the leveling scheme goes for this build, I did show off the Warlock levels first, but honestly, you can kind of take these levels in any order. We're not really gunning to get anything from either of the classes, so kind of feel free to level up in whatever order you like here. I would actually probably recommend taking this second level of Druid a bit earlier to get some of these like kind of flavor spells, because they'll definitely help. At Druid level 3, we get to choose our first Circle of the Land domain, allowing us to pull 2 extra spells to add to our prepared spell list from a certain area of the world. And since Titania holds dominion over most of it, we can kind of pick whatever we like here. Let's have a look at the options. Arctic will give you Hold Person and Spike Growth, which would personally be my choice, I think. Hold Person is obviously, again, ticking Titania off. She just freezes you in place. We could flavor it as her ice magic. Could be very fun. As well as Spike Growth, again, making things arise from nature to damage her foes, obviously makes sense. But there are a few more options. Coast for Mirror Image and Misty Step if you really want to lean into that Fey trickery. That's another really solid option. Desert for Blur and Silence, probably not my first pick, but does kind of fit the theme. Hold Person and Barkskin. Passive Out Trace and Invisibility. Spike Growth and Mirror Image. Elf's Acid Arrow and Darkness, probably not that one. And Underdark for Misty Step and Web. Honestly, I would say pretty much any of these work. It's actually a pick your favorite situation here. And I would say looking through it, I know I was immediately drawn to Arctic, but Coast also feels pretty good for Fey Trickery. I think I'll go with that, since getting Misty Step is a really nice spell to have. So I think I'll go with this, but honestly, anything you like here works. pick your favourite. We also do get to choose another spell at this point, and we have access to level 2 spells. So sticking on that fire spell theming of just being able to look at someone and say, actually, you've ticked me off, light on fire, let's grab Heat Metal. Again, working kind of against the machine here when nature versus, well, technology. We're able to just stare at someone who's wearing metal or is made of metal, in the case of something like a Steel Watcher, and just force them to take 2d8 fire damage every turn with disadvantage on their attack rolls and ability checks, as long as they're holding their weapon or still wearing their armor. Honestly, pretty damn cool. I like Heat Metal in this case. Flame Blade and Flaming Sphere also work in this sense. Obviously, we can pick up Spike Growth in a minute. Enhance ability is an overall great buffing spell. So, again, pick your favourites. There's a lot of options and variants here. Again, we're kind of building the most stereotypical Archfey Druid build we can, so any of these work. At Druid level 4, we get to choose another cantrip, so it's up to you what you want to grab here. We kind of have everything though, so we might as well grab Produce Flame for another fire damage attack. We also do get to choose another spell from our spell list, and I think I've made a good enough case for Spike Growth, so we'll grab that here. And finally, we do get another ability score improvement here. I was originally going to throw on the dual wielder feat onto this build, because Titania's avatar was known for having a dagger. Although it was mostly decorative because she was still a spellcaster, I decided it was again kind of just a footnote in the lore that we didn't really need to look into so much, because this isn't meant to be Titania's avatar, it's just meant to be a chosen whose abilities are, you know, inspired by her. So I think it makes more sense to just go for an ability score improvement and kind of round everything out with an 18 in wisdom, so that we're pretty good with all of our stats across the board. At Druid level 5, we get to choose another Circle of the Land feature, as well as our level 3 spells. For our new options, we have Arctic, which will give you Sleet Storm and Haste, which would probably be a personal pick of mine, obviously more ice magic, as well as Haste, which is a powerful spell. There's Coast, which will give you Sleet Storm and Cool Lightning, another interesting combo. Desert for Hypnotic Pattern and Protection from Energy, so there's another way to get Hypnotic Pattern if you didn't get it from Warlock, but I would probably get it from Warlock since Protection from Energy isn't that great. Forest for Plant Growth and Cool Lightning. Grassland for Haste and Daylight. Probably would rather take Arctic if you want Haste. Mountain for Fly and Cool and Lightning Bolt, which is personally one of my favourites. Swamp for Vampiric Touch and Stinking Cloud. And Underdark for Gaseous Form and Stinking Cloud. I definitely think Arctic is the best one for us here. Haste is a powerful spell to have anyway, and this means both Gale and this build will have access to Slow and Haste, allowing you to change it up as you see fit. And Sleet Storm just makes sense again with Titania's sort of icy powers that she has on the rare occasion, so you know, it kind of works. For our prepared spells, we also do get to choose a few more here, and obviously we're going to grab some Plant Growth to be able to make a difficult terrain area which quarters movement speed, which is obviously very, very good for battlefield control, especially when we combine this with spells like Fear, Hypnotic Pattern, Confusion, and later on even Hold Monster in Person to really make it so enemies are just stuck in place and cannot move. We're going to have a lot of battlefield control by the time this build is done. The rest of it is kind of up to you. I don't really know what I would pick here. Let's grab Hold Person. At Druid level 6, we're going to gain access to Difficult Terrain, Land Stride, meaning the difficult terrain no longer slows us down, which is nice, and the Panther and Owlbear Wild Shapes. We're also going to gain access to another spell of our choosing, and really we kind of have everything that I would want already, so let's grab a little bit of bonus action healing with Healing Word. And finally, at Druid level 7, we gain access to level 4 spells. We're going to get another Circle of the Land feature, so it's entirely up to you what you want to grab. Arctic would give you Conjure Minor Elemental and Ice Storm. Coast would give you Confusion and Freedom of Movement. Desert would give you Wall of Fire and Blight. Probably my personal pick, because I really like the idea of Wall of Fire for spreading wildfires. Probably what I would go with, especially since we can get the other spells normally anyway, which I'll talk about in a minute. We also have access to Forest for Conjure Minor Elemental and Grasping Vine, Grassland for Freedom of Movement and Polymorph, Stone Skin and Dominate Beast, Blight and Grasping Vine, Greater Invisibility and Dominate Beast. Greater Invisibility is a pretty cool spell as well. Might be something you want to go for, but for now, we're going to grab Desert for that Wall of Fire. So here's the fun part. Now that we've hit level 7 on Druid, which again, you could take earlier in the build if you want, we get a lot of things that I kind of want for this build all at once. Obviously, we just grabbed Wall of Fire, which is pretty goddamn nice, but also because this is kind of a summoner build as well, getting to pick up both Conjure Minor Elemental and Conjure Woodland Being is gonna feel pretty damn good for this build, which is why I wanted to grab it. But I would also take Polymorph, because that's a very Fae thing to do, as well as Confusion, so I might drop Fairy Fire for Confusion here. Dominate Beast obviously also makes sense. I might drop Hold Person for that, since Gale was more going to be focused on that anyway. And I would say, we definitely want Polymorph somewhere here. I don't like it, but we're gonna give up our snack to get Polymorph. I know it's a lot of level 4 spells and not a lot of level 4 spell slots, but, I mean, there's always a Spellcrux Amulet, and it's just kind of nice to have options, you know? And that is the build. Overall, what you're going to be getting out of this is a pretty decent battlefield control build. You're good at wisdom, intelligence, and charisma checks, so you're going to be pretty good as the face of the party, which makes sense for what we're trying to go for here. Again, battlefield control, hypnotic pattern, crown of madness, fey presence. You've got the option to be really offensive with things like booming blade and shillelagh if you want to go for melee bonks, as well as big damage spells like heat metal. You can summon allies to help your aid. You're going to be extremely tanky with things like armor of Agathis, helping to buff your HP, and again, you can even make your allies faster with things like haste or control the battlefield with slow, wall of fire, confusion. You've just got so many fun things to play with here, and you're pretty good with your resource recovery, using natural recovery to recover up to a level 4 spell slot, allowing you to summon a bunch of stuff. And at the end of the day, you can still wild shape. That is always an option for you. We have those wild shape charges, so if you're really angry, just be an owlbear for a bit. Let loose, have a little bit of fun, inject some joy into your life, go crazy. Aren't you tired of being nice? Anyways, let's move on to the equipment so that we can get over to the Gale side of things and not make this video 2 hours long. So, you're probably looking at this and thinking, well, that's a bit weird. But let's talk about it. First up, the Markaheshkir staff. Honestly, this is just the big spellcasting staff, giving us access to a +1 bonus to spell save DCs and spell attack rolls, as well as the ability to be able to cast spells once per long rest without needing to use a spell slot to cast it, so giving us a bit of freedom when it comes to our spell choices. But the main thing I obviously wanted this for, is Kareska's Favor. Kareska's Favor allows us to, every short rest, choose a magical buff to apply to ourselves. That'll give us 2 spells based on an element that we choose, as well as the ability to use those spells to inflict a status condition based on that element as well. So fire gives you things like Fireball and Flame Strike, as well as the heat mechanic whenever you cast fire spells. Lightning will give you, I believe it's just, lightning is Lightning Bolt, and I think Chain Lightning, and I think things like Thunder would be like, Destructive Wave and Reverberation and such like that. It gives you a lot of options, and again, with the fact that the Eladrin tend to change seasons and gain different kind of personalities and stuff like that based on the seasons, and because Titania is known for having so many different elemental magics, it makes sense for her to be able to choose, once per short rest, which of the seasons she wants to focus on. I'd probably choose between Fire, Ice, maybe lightning and thunder. I'm not sure. It's kind of up to you to choose what you want based on each season, but otherwise I thought this was a pretty cool mechanic to lean into. And obviously this will give us big spells that we don't otherwise normally have access to. Some cast at upwards of level 5 and 6, which is really nice considering we're not a full spellcaster otherwise, because we took Warlock levels instead of something like Cleric. So otherwise, the Markaheshkir just helps fill out our big powerful spellcasting kind of abilities, and I'm ever thankful for it. But in the other game, grab the Pale Oak, giving you access to Faith Warden's Vines, another way of ensnaring people, making it so Druidic Vines cannot ensnare you in return. Both of these abilities obviously making sense for this build. Moving on to our headpiece, the Helldusk Helmet. Now I know what you're thinking, that might seem like a bit of a weird choice, but let me explain. Not only can we not be blinded, meaning that we don't need to take Devil's Sight if we want to take advantage of that, we also gain a +2 bonus to saving throws against spells. One of my kind of soft goals for this build was to actually make this build as good at mental saving throws as possible, and having that also helps. We also don't have critical hits land against us, but the main thing here is Immolating Gaze. Yeah, remember when I said that Titania's gaze alone could drive people mad and also start wildfires and such like that? Well, this is that. Not only does this frighten the target, it also deals 2d8 fire damage. Again, you tick her off, she looks at you the wrong way, and you're dead and scared the whole time that you're burning to death. Which is terrifying, but again, that's the Archfey. All pretty and such on the surface, but they're just as bad as the demons at the end of the day on the inside. Also, this can do extra damage to targets that are already burning, so I mean, we didn't start the fire, but perhaps it was always burning. Speaking of burning, the Cindermoth Cloak as our cloak of choice. Creatures that damage you within 2 meters receive burning. So again, fun little combination there. Someone walks up to you, smacks you, they feel the full wrath of Immolating Gaze on them because you just set them on fire for daring to touch you with their weapon. Moving on to our armor, the Armour of Landfall. I mean, this is a pretty popular choice at the moment for my channel, but it makes sense as to why, especially for this build. It gives you a +1 bonus to spell save DC, and whenever you start your turn on a plant growth surface or a vine surface, you regain a bit of HP. You have advantage on Constitution saving throws, which would be great for maintaining our powerful concentration spells, as well as it gives you a usage of plant growth once per short rest without the need to use a spell slot, so we're just spreading nature everywhere. Next up, obviously the Gloves of Dexterity, setting our Dexterity score to 18. Don't need to focus on it any more than that. And finally, the Disintegrating Night Walkers. We have the ability to create web surfaces if you decide to go for the Underdark path. We create a lot of grassy surfaces that can entangle or ensnare our foes, and we also can create icy surfaces as well. We don't want to be falling over on those and losing our concentration, so this helps, as well as giving us Misty Step once per short rest to blink around the map. Moving on to our accessories, we of course have the Fae Semblance Amulet. You have advantage on Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma saving throws, pairing this with the Helldusk Helm, and we're going to be very, very good at saving throws, so that really helps us resist being charmed and such like that, which also helps from our Fae ancestry as well. Moving on to our ring choice. First up, I'll talk about the Ring of Mental Inhibition. Whenever a foe fails a saving throw against one of our spells or actions, they do gain mental fatigue for 2 turns, making them worse at mental saving throws, and when you get enough stacks, they'll take a little bit of psychic damage. This obviously is meant to make it so that we can synergize with Gale a bit better. Not only does this make our own spells more powerful because of the reducing the saving throws of our enemies, but it also means that Gale has a higher chance to succeed because we're doing this and basically opening up an opportunity for him. Again, I'll explain more about Gale in a minute. But speaking of Gale, we have True Love's Caress. Yes, if we're going to go for a romance build, I'm just going to do the obvious thing and make it so that Gale can give Warding Bond to our Titania avatar here, or Chosen, or whatever. So these two rings allow them to basically allow Gale to cast Warding Bond on our character, giving us resistance to all damage at the cost of the fact that we will share damage. And that can be a little bit dangerous with Gale's squishy HP, but otherwise it does kind of create a nice actual mechanical bond that the player characters will have, so I wanted to bring it up. For our early game equipment for this build, we have access to the That's weird. Okay, so the tooltip on this is bugging out. This is actually the, what the heck is going on here? Ignore me. This is actually the Fistbreaker Helm, which will allow you to gain a +1 bonus to your initiative rolls and increase your spell save DC by 1, which can help out in the early game. I'm pretty sure that's the description. Check the wiki page below. But for the early game armors, these are medium armor. We have 2 options. The Urkfather's Embrace in Act 1, meaning that any undead creatures that hit you will receive 1d6 radiant damage, but beasts that hit you will deal an additional 1d6 radiant damage. So be a friend to nature, or get smacked. And for Act 2, you can grab the Bark Skin Armor to give you a little bit of extra armor class. I would also recommend this one if you do decide to go without the Gloves of Dexterity, because this will just give you a decent AC either way. It also gives you advantage on those Constitution saving throw checks, which to be honest is the main thing I want from the Armour of Landfall. So if you decide to not go with the Gloves of Dexterity, this is a great alternative. Entirely up to you. For our camp clothing here, we've gone with the Lady Janeth set, coloured in the Mieleki dye, same as the armour, which is coloured in the same dye. And I kind of like the idea of this outfit having a on and off again kind of deal. Like, this is combat mode, where we're like this brightly coloured Feywild nature druid type deal, and then outside of combat, we have this dress, which I've just realised is only wearing leggings and nothing else. I'll be honest, I don't really view the characters up close until, like, I get into the character creator after the fact and I start making the video with the new camera angles, just kind of realizing what this looks like under the dress. Whoops. Never mind, it still kind of fits the vibe of the build. You can see why Gale was interested. Right, speaking of, let's talk about him now. Gale is a level 10 enchantment wizard and a level 2 knowledge cleric of Mystra. We're going to be pulling from Mistra's divine knowledge. I know we're kind of always talking about our ex, but whatever. And being able to pull from knowledge means that we're going to be an excellent court wizard. Using the knowledge of the ages, channel divinity ability, allowing us to gain proficiency in all skills of a certain ability, we're going to always be the perfect companion to our, gracious lady Titania, whatever, right? So we're going to be able to basically be a kind of skill monkey for her, as well as with our high levels in enchantment wizard, we're going to be able to do some pretty exceptional things with our battlefield control. We have Banishment, Hold Monster, Dominate Person, Hold Person, Command, which, even though this uses our Wisdom, actually works really well still. Crown of Madness, Friends, Tasha's Hideous Laughter, and a bunch of other stuff to help us control the battlefield in many different ways. We're going to have Hypnotic Gaze, which can charm and incapacitate creatures. We're going to have things like Sanctuary to protect our other when we need to. And we're also Gale, and pulling from Titania's inspiration of wildfire attacks, we've got things like Firebolt and Fireball to lay out the big damage when we need to. We can teleport ourselves around with Dimension Door, being able to take both ourselves and Titania with us. We're also going to have our sleep spell as well, Shield of Faith to give it more AC. We're just going to be an overall amazing support character. I would also recommend grabbing some summoning spells as well. Conjure Elemental to bring in even more elemental creatures to summon to your aid. Being able to summon a Diva, as that is kind of part of Titania's lore as well, so being able to work with Celestials in that sense can actually work as well, although I'll be revisiting this in another Patron build soon. We just have a ton of decent support options to help do everything that we can with this build, and it feels pretty good. We've even got Detect Thoughts to really help out in conversation situations. This honestly just feels like a perfect partner to a build. We get things like Split Enchantment from Enchantment Wizard, which allows us to cast these enchantment spells that you can see that are lit up here on 2 targets at once, which is just busted. And again, having that strong basis with Knowledge Cleric as well, just to be able to do all of these different things, feels pretty damn nice. Our stats are pretty simple here. By the end of the, basically just kind of want to build a standard spread. 16 in Dex, 14 in Con, 12 in Wisdom, and 16 in Intelligence to start, using 2 ability score improvements to bump up your Intelligence to 20. Even with our Wisdom score being really low, we only want a few select Cleric spells anyway, mainly just support stuff. And while we do get Command from Knowledge Cleric, you'd think having a lower Wisdom would make this trickier to use, but in all of my testing, Command still had like an 85% chance to succeed, thanks to the debuffs we apply from Titania and such like that. So actually Command is really good here still anyway, and obviously makes a ton of sense for this build. For the equipment, we're running the Woe Staff, giving us a +1 bonus to spell save DC and spell attack rolls, and whenever a creature fails a saving throw from our spells, we regain hit points. So we get a bit of healing just for being able to, you know, do what we do, which is really, really good. We also gain access to the Blight Necromancy spell as well, just for the sake of having it, but overall this is a pretty decent staff to have. I'm not going to go into the early game equipment too much here, but I will talk about some early game staffs. Otherwise, feel free to check the description below, as I will have wiki links to early game equipment for this build, but I don't want this to take too much longer. So, first up, for your early game options, you have 2. The first one is Melf's First Staff, giving you that standard +1 buff to your spells, as well as a casting of Melf's Acid Arrow, but this is overall just a good early game spell stick because of that buff. And also, we have Staff of Arcane Blessing, allowing your Blessed to deal an additional 1d4 to saving throws and attack rolls, and an additional 2d4 to spell attack rolls. So if you cast Bless from Cleric or from this wand, you will be able to do even more with that Bless. So it's just a great support thing. It's also Mistress Blessing, so maybe Gale kind of needs to get over his exhibit, so maybe you don't want to use this one, but who knows, it is kind of integral to his backstory, and because we are part Cleric, I just felt like it worked. Moving on, we have the Circlet of Mental Anguish. Whenever an enemy fails a Charisma, Intelligence, or Wisdom saving throw against one of our spells or cantrips, you regain hit points. So that's 2d4 hit points for every saving throw failed, which is pretty good because we're stacking this with Woe. We have some pretty standard endgame options here. We do have a lot of really powerful concentration spells that rely on saving throws, and we want these to go off as consistently as possible. So grabbing both the Cloak of the Weave and the Robe of the Weave for a total +2 to our spell save, DC, and attack rolls is really nice. And whenever we succeed a saving throw against a spell, we regain an extra 1d6 hit points, which is really, really nice, as well as a +2 to our armor class, rounding us out to a pretty solid 18. Wait, do I even have mage armor on? No, I don't. This is without mage armor. Wow. I forgot to put mage armor on this build. So if you cast mage armor, you're looking at even more AC, which is pretty nice. But this is only because I did decide to stack a lot of AC stuff, because there wasn't really too much that, again, I think I needed for this build, but you can kind of swap these out if you like. We have the Braces of Defense and the Evasive Shoes, giving us another +3 to AC, as well as for our accessories, we have the Amulet of the Devout, giving us a +2 bonus to our spell save DC as well, and an additional usage of Channel Divinity if we need to switch out our skill set from our Knowledge of the Ages, and we don't want to take a short rest just yet. We also have the True Love's Embrace. This is what we need to cast the Warding Bond on Titania, so we have that here. And finally, another gift from our Titania chosen, we have the Ring of Feywild Sparks. We may not be a wild magic sorcerer this time, but so this may seem like it has no use to us. But it is a Feywild ring, which makes sense as a gift from a chosen of Titania, but also this is a hidden ability of the ring. It actually gives a +1 bonus to spell save DC. Yeah, not listed on the features here, but it is a thing, so it does have a mechanical benefit for us. An alternative option, though, for your amulet could be the Unflinching Protector amulet, allowing you to, once per short rest, nullify an attack against a party member, which obviously makes sense for this build, so feel free to have that on the build as well. Maybe you can swap between the two amulets based on the situation. And finally, for our outfit here, we have the camp clothing of Lady Whiteburn from the Fia Taylor's camp clothing mod. All of the camp clothing here is from Fia Taylor's camp clothing. And we have the vanilla Feywild green and Dun Dun dye. And on the original build, if I forgot to mention it, we're using the Mia-Lucky dye on, again, another Fia Taylor's camp clothing kind of outfit here. But yes, that is the build, and overall, I'm pretty happy with this one. I think it's a fun little concept, and I haven't done a duo build in a long time, and honestly, these two work really, really well together. You can shut down entire encounters with that split enchantment from the level 10 feature, as well as just having two characters that are dedicated to battlefield control with powerful wide-spreading effects is really, really good. And being able to control things with like plant growth as a base, since it's non-concentration, is really good. Stacking that with things like Hypnotic Pattern, Fear, all that good stuff, Crown of Madness, slow to really just completely debilitate your enemies feels so good. Like, we didn't even really get touched in the combat footage, which, I mean, obviously is a little bit skewed because I did test these two builds together, because obviously it makes sense to do so, as opposed to my usual solo testing, so obviously it performed a bit better than usual, but honestly, I don't think it would have mattered. Either of these builds could have gone on a rampage pretty much on their own, and while I think the Gale build really does help the Titania build out, they're both really, really good individually, but together, I mean, they just make so much sense. So yeah, for the first time in a long time, it's a duo build, baby, and I hope you enjoyed it. Right, this video will already have gone on longer than normal. What are we looking at? Oh, 41 minutes. That's actually not too bad, but I will still end it here regardless. So, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.